Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are just about at 8:30, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order here. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Brian, and I am an alcoholic. Hey, Brian. This is a one-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday right here at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. That's 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, PA. The food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock every Saturday, and the speaker comes on at 8:30. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7:30. Please feel free to come early and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. If there's anybody new at this meeting for the first time or anyone visiting from out of town who would like to introduce themselves on a first name basis, we can welcome you. Yeah. Tony? Welcome. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Chris Lynn, alcoholic.
Chris, welcome. Yeah.
Mike, alcoholic.
Mike. Welcome. Get it? Yeah.
I'm Mike, I'm alcoholic.
Mike. Welcome.
Good evening, Wally, alcoholic.
Wally. Welcome. Well, welcome everyone. Got everybody? The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. So we got sponsors here. If you're new, if you're just coming around, there's always a meeting after the meeting. Hang out with us, grab one of those people. We'd love to talk with you, get into the solution a little bit. Are there any announcements from the floor for the good of AA? Yeah, Nick?
My name is Nick, I'm an alcoholic.
Nick.
And there is a Labor Day picnic. The Feet First and Jaywalkers group of AA is having a picnic on Labor Day. There you go, September, whatever that day is. Anyway,
The 6th, September 6th.
Fellowship, speaker at 7. I have a flyer here if anyone's interested. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? A couple quick announcements from this group. Our sister group is a big book study group. It meets right up the road here. Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. It's at Salem UCC Church. That's 186 East Court Street in Doylestown, PA. And the coffee for that meeting's on at 6:15. So again, feel free to show up early. Join us if you want to get involved with service. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of CDs and big books to help those who can't afford them can put their donations in that jar on the back table marked big book and CD donations. All CDs are available free of charge. This group has a YouTube channel. We post speakers from this group on there. We post speakers from a group we have on Monday nights, Stay Alive group. It's a speaker discussion group. We also have a Facebook page. You can follow us on our Facebook page. We post happenings, upcoming speakers, events, anniversaries, and a lot of other AA groups will post things they have going on. So it's a good resource to have to stay tied in with the happenings of AA throughout the area. And with that, I believe Nick is going to come up here. He's going to read our Just for Today prayer of recovery.
Thank you, Brian. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic. And welcome home. This is the Just for Today prayer of recovery. Just for today, I'll be agreeable. I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault with anything, and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. And now I have Dave to come up and read the preamble.
My name is Dave. I'm an alcoholic. This is the AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I have Will coming up to do the 12 steps.
Hi, I'm Will, I'm an alcoholic. 1, we admitted we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we have harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made a direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Now I have Brian to come back up to the stage.
Okay, this group does have a 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we're going to pass the basket. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services, and your donations do help us to cover the cost of food, rent, big books, events, workshops, and the like, so it's greatly appreciated. There's absolutely no smoking on the church property. We have a good working relationship with the church. We're very lucky to have this beautiful facility to hold our meeting in every week, and really they just ask that we be considerate, keep the premise clean, so just be considerate of that as you're coming and going from the meeting. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, on loan to us from the Way Out Group. Please help me welcome Adam.
I'm Adam, I'm alcoholic. Let me get this water in now. Man. So, Ron said 52 minutes. Looks like 51 and a half. You know, when I first started having this experience getting sober, close to 8 years ago, my sponsor saw I had something to offer. And he reminded me, like, if you're ever speaking at an AA meeting, make sure you share your experience in the 12 steps, because if you've taken the actions in the 12 steps, then you have something to share. He said a lot of people have been in AA for decades, they can't shut the hell up. They've never taken one action in the 12 steps, and they're talking all the time. And he reminded me of something else. He said, don't get nervous, be honest, be humble, be relatable, carry the AA message. And he told me the most important thing that I will never forget. He said, don't get too nervous, because most people in AA don't even listen anyway, right? So, and he's right, because I came in and out of AA for a couple years, and I could grab onto the middle of the road thing, or the softer, easier way. But I wasn't done, you know. Like you could have. You remember that movie Demolition Man, where with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, they like reanimated him 50 years in the future. You could have done that with Bill Wilson in 2013. Sat him in front of me with a big book, and I wouldn't have heard a word. because I wasn't done. I came into AA, and I thought, I know I have a drinking problem, but I don't know about never drinking again my whole life. Let's take it easy, right? And I guess the best way I could put it, it hits me sometimes when I'll go to the bathroom, I'll say a prayer before I speak, because I think alcoholics' best prayers come in the bathroom, right? I look in the mirror, and like I shaved my head down pretty tight a couple years ago. I kind of figured I'd do like a Barry Sanders, like retire in my prime, you know, just take it down. No formula, nothing to spray on. Kind of like Ron, he's been doing it, right? And right here, because I'm getting a little older, it looks like I have a wrinkle. But I have this scar on my forehead, right? And I'd say 3 months before I took my last drink, this is what my party looked like. I was watching a UFC fight by myself, drinking. Had some other stuff in my system. I had a doctor tell me, if you take this, it'll help with alcohol cravings. It didn't help. I drank every day, right? That didn't help, though. And I was with my stepson, who was about 12 at the time, and his friend having a sleepover. Maybe it's midnight, 1 a.m. Hammered. The fight's over, the kids go in the room, my ex-wife's there, my son at the time, I guess he's about 5 years old. I woke him up to bring him to the bathroom. I was still a little responsible because he used to pee to bed. And I go into the bathroom, and I do that thing that guys do sometimes, especially when they're really drunk and really have to go to the bathroom. And ladies, I don't mean to be crass, but it looks like this. Like you're standing there and you do the whole thing, right? Like I'm really into this. And the next thing I know, I wake up on the back of the toilet. Head first into the tank. I look up, blood spraying everywhere, like a murder scene, right? Because your head bleeds. I look over, my stepson comes out, he's like 12 with his friend, like I just got shot. My ex-wife comes up, like, what the F? And I go, my son's name is Adam. I go, I was taking Adam to the bathroom and I tripped over him. And she looks in the bedroom and my son's right on the bed. And she's like, what are you talking about? So she takes me to the emergency room. And you know when you're drunk and you hurt yourself, it doesn't hurt as much, and then when the booze starts wearing off, the pain starts kicking in. And I'm sitting in there, and it was a small hospital near me. It wasn't like a main big hospital, but they had an emergency room. And like they came in and checked me, they said, we'll be back in. And then it just felt like forever. And as I'm sitting there, booze is wearing off, head's starting to hurt, I still have caked up blood on me. I see all these nurses running back and forth. And you know, my wife's like, I'm gonna see what's going on. And I go, yeah. And now I'm starting to get belligerent, right? Because I'm uncomfortable and I've been waiting a while and she's standing in the hallway and I'm going, hey, ask anybody in here if they have like a Band-Aid or peroxide. Like, I don't know if we're in the right place. You know, like I'm yelling at her. I want somebody to hear me. I'm being real rude. Nurse stops. My wife talks to her. My wife comes back in the room and she goes, Adam, shut the F up. She didn't say F. She said, they haven't seen you when they're running around because there's a girl the next town over. She's 7 years old. She was in a car accident, and it's so serious she might die if they don't bring her here right now. So shut the F up. And I did. In a moment of clarity, whatever that is. And that was me in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a head wound, right? Like, it hurt. I knew it was a problem, but I was not dying. I was not dying like that little girl. And the problem was, by nature, right? Like I've recovered from alcoholism. I've also probably, maybe, it kicks up every once in a while, recovered from know-it-allism. And maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm the type of person that I want to be right all the time. And if I'm not right, I want you to be wrong. And if anything else, like, I at least want to sound smarter than you, right? And that's how I sort of approach the world. And the problem with asking for help is, if I ask you for help, you immediately know I don't know something. And I did not like that. That was too big of a bruise for my ego. You know, I remember the second AA meeting I ever went to. I went to a therapist, and he was the first guy. I said, I think I'm an alcoholic. And he said, I think you're powerless over alcohol. And I said, that sounds about right. Neither of us knew what that meant at that time. But he said, go to an AA meeting. He pulled out a meeting book. I went to it. It was a step. They read the 12 and 12. So I had no idea what I was doing there. It was a small room. It was like 10 people. Everybody went around and read a paragraph and commented. And I remember reading it, and I don't know what it was, but I started hysterically crying. Right? It was something in there about family or whatever. And to the credit of the men in that room, after the meeting, they huddled around me, asked me who my name was and what was going on with me, offered me their number. And then this is it. The 12 and 12 says alcoholics are egomaniacs with an inferiority complex. And that was me. These guys offered me help. And I'm like, dude, what's up with you guys? Back off. 20 minutes ago, I was crying in front of them like a baby. Skip to 20 minutes later, where they're being nice and asking me if I need help, and here's my number, and now I think they're weirdos and they should leave me alone. Because that's where I was at. That's where I was at. On December 5th, 2016, I woke up that morning. You ever, people will say, I woke up that day and I said, you know, this is the last time, I'm not going to drink anymore, right? People say stuff like that. On December 5th, 2016, I woke up and my first thought was, I need a drink. Because I woke up on the couch, but I remember falling asleep on the floor. I remember having an argument with my wife the night before. I don't know about what, but I knew I was right, you know. I met a guy once who told me he used to get drunk and argue with his wife, and before he went to bed, he would write down what the argument was about so he could prove himself right in the morning. And I always wished I did that back then, because that's how I was I always wanted to be right. Like, I don't care if I'm on the couch, you know? Then I wake up at 2 in the morning, like, why am I on the couch, you know? And I wake up that morning, and I'm like, where's my car? And I know I went to 7-Eleven last night to get cigarettes. I know her and I argued. I know about an hour ago she was going to work and she asked me if I was going to work and I said no. And she looked at me with that look she'd been giving me for years now. Ugh, disgust, right? That's the guy I was to her. And I earned every bit of it. But I knew one thing. I knew that I had just enough Bacardi in the handle that if I could get up, drink the Bacardi, I'd be all right. And I used to drink clear Bacardi by the handle. I had a love affair with it. There was a time in my life where if you would have let me, I would have married a bottle of Bacardi. Like, I would have put a little wedding dress on it, and we would have had a ceremony. And those, you know, those handle bottles are funny because at the bottom it looks like you have that much. But the bottom's popped up a little bit in those thick bottles, so it's really only about that much. And I was like an alcoholic scientist at this point. So I knew it was just enough if I drink this, take the edge off, the hamster wheel in my head will slow down about what happened last night, what happened in the last 3 years, maybe what happened my whole life, and all the guilt and the shame and the remorse I have will just slow all that down, and I could go about my day. I've been doing it for years now. And I put it in my coffee. I went outside. I used to put Bacardi in my coffee. It's disgusting. But I really liked it. I used to tell myself it was like a mudslide, you know? And I remember drinking it that day, and I felt the physical sensation of alcohol, especially crappy hard liquor, burning in my body that you feel, right, that I'm so accustomed to. But what I did not feel in that moment was the mental ease that followed. And it was the scariest thing in that moment to me. And I heard a voice, and I'll probably never be able to explain it because the only voice you hear in your head is your voice, right? So you think you're talking to you, but sometimes the really good ideas definitely aren't yours, you know? Like, I wish the voice in my head had an Irish accent. It would be pretty cool, you know? Maybe a Boston accent, maybe an accent like I'm from Louisiana, right? But it's my stupid voice in my stupid head, and the voice said, this ain't gonna work anymore. And I knew it. I felt it in my body. Alcohol will never work anymore. And as scary as that thought was, the thought after that was even scarier. The second thing that I heard was, go back to AA. Go back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm like, dude, AA sucks, right? It doesn't work. I've been to your meetings, hundreds of meetings. I've gotten a couple 90-day coins. Maybe one of them was real, but whatever. I didn't think mouthwash counted at one point. I thought you could subtract days. I had 90 days. I drank 88 days. Whatever, right? AA stinks. It doesn't work. I've had 3.5 sponsors. Went to the rehab where they sell you the big book as a curriculum, and you can get. I used to get B pluses and B minuses on big book reports in rehab. Like, I know your AA stuff. It doesn't work. And the voice said, just do something different this time. And I went back to AA, and I went to 3-4 meetings maybe. And where I'm from, you guys might do it out here. At the end of the meeting, some meetings will say, does anybody have a burning desire? Something you really got to share. Are you going to drink today? Whatever. And I raised my hand in every meeting. They called on me, and I just started crying. Because I wanted to tell the people how much I was hurting and how dumb I felt. Like, how the hell are you back in AA? How did you think you could drink again? Everything that the research and the evidence that's been collected, and it was like what was in my head and my heart kind of got lost in my throat. I started crying. And probably by the 4th or 5th meeting, I realized I am doing what I've always just done. I'm attending AA thinking if for 1 hour a day for the rest of my life, I keep a chair warm, suddenly by osmosis or breathing the air in the room and drinking bad coffee, I'll be sober for the rest of my life. You know, like I used to do, like, I'd see Ron back then and be like, if I sit close enough to Ron, rub my elbow against him, maybe I'll stay sober. You know. And I went back to this group. It's my home group now. I knew these guys did something different, and they did the stuff that I hadn't done, that I wasn't willing to do. Like, take the actions outlined in the 12 steps. Be part of a big book group. Selflessly give of your time to carry the message and help other people. Was not on my agenda at all in AA. I came for me. I wasn't cared about anybody else. I know, do you guys pass meeting books around here where you put numbers down? We do it in my area, right? They have a meeting book. On the back, you can put your numbers down. When I used to go to AA, swear to God, they passed the meeting book around. And when it came to me, I'd write my name, because I didn't want to look like a jerk who wouldn't write his name. And then I would write the wrong phone number, because I didn't want anybody from AA calling me. I don't want to talk to you. I damn sure didn't want to help you. The only thing I thought I should do in AA is come to a meeting, and if I complain enough about my day or say something real smart or cool I heard somewhere else or on the internet, you might like me or think I'm funny, and then I was still miserable, and I was on a fast track to drinking again. That's who I was. And I went back to this meeting, and there was this guy, Chuck, there, who had always been really nice to me, and he made it very clear what he did to stay sober, and it was about God and the 12 steps and the actions we take, right? And he had this big book group, and I thought these guys were crazy. And then there was this guy, Joe, that was sort of like, the two of them kind of like ran the meeting a little bit, and I really liked Chuck. I really didn't like Joe. And he kind of has that way about him. He's better these days. But I know now I didn't like him because I was envious of what he had. Because when he spoke about the solution, about alcoholism, about the big book, about what he was doing, I believed him, and I didn't even believe myself at that point, you know? So after going to a couple meetings, I actually called the guy Chuck up because I had just had enough, right? I'm back a couple weeks now, I'm holding on. And Chuck, I was like, hey man, I got to talk to you. And he's like, look, dude, I'm on vacation. He's like, give Joe a call. And I'm thinking, like, dude, I don't even like Joe, right? And I called him up, and my ego was still there, and I said, Joe, can you take me through the 12 steps? I couldn't even say, could you be my sponsor? I don't know. And he said, yeah. He said, but let me ask you a question. Are you done? And I said, yeah, I'm done. Like, I'm thinking, like, bro, I don't even like you. And, like, I'm done, dude. I'm asking you. And I'm, like, got tears in my eyes, like, as I'm talking to him. I'm like, bro, I can't do this anymore. And he said, good, because if you ain't done, go do some more drinking. He said, because you're going to build up the hope in yourself and in the people around you, and then you're just going to get drunk again, and every time you do it, it gets worse than the time before. And I remember feeling a little sold in that moment because I felt like this guy had been spying on me for a couple years. Like because he knew the alcoholic experience, the real alcoholic experience. He saw me in AA meetings full of crap, coming back drunk again, relapse, and he knew it because that's what I had been doing. And we quickly got to work. And I know somebody tried to do this to me before, but I couldn't hear it. The first time we sat down, he explained alcoholism to me, as described in our big book, through his experience, and then he said, does that sound like anything you've experienced? And I said, yeah. And he said, that's great. Everybody says, yeah, tell me a story or two. Because he explained to me, like, alcoholism, it's not like, oh, I can't have enough. That was actually a really good moment for me because he said, I'm gonna ask you a question, and it might bruise your ego or your pride a little bit, but it's for a purpose. Because he saw me in AA being somebody who thought I knew something. He said, what does it mean to be alcoholic here in AA? And now, mind you, I've been to hundreds of meetings, right? I've had sponsors, read big parts of the big book, and I said, I can't have enough. And he goes, it has nothing to do with alcoholism. I said, there are a lot of consequences when I drink. He said, that's not a description of alcoholism. And I'm going back and forth. I'm giving him all these answers. I think I'm giving him answers from NA, something I read on Google, right? One's not enough and 1,000's too many, whatever it is, I don't know, right? And he goes, it's two things and two things only, control and choice. Physically and mentally, when it comes to alcohol, you're different than probably 95% of everybody walking on the planet Earth. And this is what it looks like. And he told me some stories, and things started to click for me. Like, I never understood why, like, my wife went to the hospital one time, and I took her there, and when she got there, she looked like she was going to die. And then the doctor was like, she has septic pneumonia, it's a septic infection, and she's going to be here a couple days, and we have to stabilize her. Can you please get out of the room? And I said, okay. And I went to the parking lot. I said, I'm going to get some air. Get some air meant go to my trunk where the bottle of Bacardi was hidden in my toolbox, right? Because I figured if I got pulled over, no cop would ever look in the toolbox, right? And I poured myself a little drink in my bottle of soda, and I just took the edge off, and I went back in the hospital, and she stayed the night. The second night, I did the same exact thing at some point, just to take the edge off, to handle being in the hospital with her, but I didn't get drunk, and I was a daily drinker at this point, already alcoholic. So the third night, they let her go home. I'm driving home. She's saying, Adam, I want to go right back to the hospital. I don't feel good. I don't even know why they let me out. And I'm thinking, I've been really inconvenienced the last couple days. I'm sure you're okay. We'll go home. Get home. I said, why don't you lay down? I'll straighten up the house. Kids are at your sister's. If you don't feel good when you get up, I'll take you back to the hospital. And I meant it. I did. She said, fine. She lays down. I said, I'm going to have a drink and take the edge off. And the next thing I know, it's about 2 hours later, and I come to in a wrestling match with her over the car keys. Because I'm too hammered to drive her back to the hospital, and she wants to go back to the hospital. Like, I had to really, like, the 2 days before I was able to have one drink. Today I have one drink. I might have to take her back to the hospital, and I'm hammered. Hammered in like 2 hours. It wasn't my plan. Come to find out, real alcoholics with this allergy know what that's about. A lot of people don't. Like, you ever take, maybe like you take your wife out or something and she says, I'm gonna have a glass of wine, she has a glass of wine. I'm gonna have a martini, she has a martini. Sometimes she orders the second martini, takes 3 sips and leaves 6 ounces of martini in the glass. And like, that's alcohol abuse, right? I don't know what that's about. Plus it's like $37 worth of alcohol, you know what I mean? I don't know what that's about, right? But he goes, that's not really, he goes, that's not your major problem. He says, you have a mind that tells you it wasn't that bad last time. He said, your obsession to drink alcohol is stronger than your strongest human thought. What is your strongest human thought? I said, I love my son more than anything in the world. He said, have you ever tried to put your son in front of a drink? I said, many times. And he said, how did it work out? And I said, it didn't. I'm here with you. And he said, well, tell me a story, right? What does it look like? And my son was about 2. He ended up in the hospital. He had an ear infection that went to his skull, and his skull swelled up. And it was potentially deadly because it could go to his brain. And we took him to the hospital, and he had to stay in the hospital for about 4 nights. He had to get intravenous antibiotics. And my son was always just like beefy little dude, never liked to really cuddle, or he hugged a little bit, but he wasn't one of those kids. And he would not leave my side or his mother's side while he was in there because he was so uncomfortable and so scared. I mean, they couldn't find a vein in him. They were sticking him with needles like a pin cushion. He had this contraption on his arm to keep the IV in, and he was just glued to us. So we took turns staying the night. And the night I had to stay there, I packed my bag, and like a good alcoholic, I made sure I had a little Diet Coke and a water bottle filled with Bacardi. Now, if you're not alcoholic, you'll probably never do that. But that's how I was living. I'm in the hospital with them. I'm laying in the bed with them. And I hope you guys never experience this, but if you have, you know what I'm talking about. In a pediatric hospital unit, they'll have a crib, and the crib has a thick plastic sheet that zips up, and it's attached to the runners on the ceiling, right? So you can put a baby in the crib, and they won't jump out. Now, my son didn't even sleep in a crib at home, and I couldn't figure out how to make a drink and get some ease and comfort with my son attached to me. I needed 2 hands. I couldn't figure it out. And I took him, and I put him in this crib, and I zipped it down. And this guy, you would have thought this guy was in Alcatraz, right? Banging on the plastic like he was gonna break it. And I'm like, it's okay. And I'm trying to make this drink. Finally, I zip up the plastic, and I just put my hand in there, right? Like, just calm down. I'm trying to hold this hand so I can drink with this hand, right? People with a normal relationship with alcohol will never do that. I know what it's like for my son to come visit me at rehab, look me in the eye, because he hadn't seen me in 4 months, like he didn't know who the hell I was. Tell myself, I know they're telling me to go to AA here at the rehab, and we're doing all this great talk therapy, but I'm going to remember that look. It's seared into my consciousness, and my son will never look at me like that again, because I'm never going to pick a drink up again. Got out of rehab 6 days later, I was drunk. And as I started to understand that this doesn't make me a bad guy, it means I'm the real deal alcoholic as described in the big book from the doctor's opinion to page 44, it kind of like allowed me to move forward, that I finally understood I truly, truly belong here. I'm out of ideas. And whatever I do with this guy, I got some faith that it'll work. And we got to work. And I remember going through an inventory with him, and I found out like a really interesting thing about resentments. The people who I was resentful toward, it had been like this corroding thread in my life, right? Whether I knew it or not. Come to find out, all the things they did that I'm resentful for toward them, I have done to other people too. Sometimes to those people. But when I do it, I get like a hall pass. When they do it, they should be, you know, thrown off a bridge. Like, I didn't see it. Like, I'm resentful toward the next girlfriend. Oh, Joe, she cheated on me. Hey, Adam, did you ever cheat on her? It was different, right? That's how I was viewing the world. I thought I was really special, very self-absorbed, selfish. I started seeing the fears. And, you know, it was funny. My sponsor made me write a list of fears. So I write a lot of things, right? Like death, my son dying, I don't know, never getting sober, right? I'm writing all these fears. And the last thing I wrote was German Shepherds, right? I don't know why. When I was a little kid, a German Shepherd jumped on me, right? So he said, German Shepherds, huh? So then he flips it over and he goes, I want you to make another list. I want you to write a list of the things you're not afraid of. And it was like a trick, because I'm like, oh, crap. And he's like, well, you're afraid of German Shepherds. He's like, what about like kittens? You know, kittens playing with a ball of yarn. Like, are you afraid of them? And I'm like, cats are vicious animals. You never know when they're going to attack you. Like, I'm afraid of cats too. Like, And I realized I'm afraid of everything, whether I realize it or not. And the opposite of fear is faith. My sponsor told me too, he said, you could tell people an old story, but you should make sure you tell them a story like right now. If you have the 12 steps in your life, today, last week, maybe a month ago, what does your life look like in the 12 steps? And my ex-wife, a week ago, reached out to me and said, I would really like to make an amends to you. And if you knew my ex-wife and my history with her, that's like a shot of God to begin with. And she's been going through her own journey in another 12-step fellowship. It's not a substance abuse fellowship, but it's similar to AA. And my first thought was, no, screw you. You're not going to make amends to me, right? As super sober as I am, that's my first thought. Then my second judgmental thought is, let me see what BS amends they do in this other fellowship, right? It's not going to be like our AA amends. And the third thought was, I'm afraid. Like, that didn't come out that way, but the third thought was like, I don't trust her. I don't know. And, you know, here's the reality. I have this relationship with my ex-wife where in sobriety, I got divorced about a year sober. And then like 2 or 3 times over the course of 7 years, we tried to get back together and just cause more harm. And the last time I made an amends to her, it was genuine. And immediately afterward, we were intimate. So that kind of ruined the whole thing. So if you're trying to figure out your amends in here, make sure that that's not on the table, because that can kind of mess things up. And that's my experience, and I'm honest and I'm human. So I was afraid about how I would be in a situation. I was afraid about how she would be. I prayed on it. I asked my sponsor. And he said, you should let her do it. And then he wrote ... in big capital letters, in a public place. So I said, sure. And I met her at the park today. And it was the most honest and genuine she'd ever been to me about what she did wrong, what she's done wrong, because she's one of those people that has a hard time saying sorry. It wasn't a full AA kind of amends, but it was things that I knew or that I felt, but it was good to hear her say them, for me and for her. And it gave me an opportunity to make amends for a couple things since the last time I tried to make amends to her. And what was really cool was one of the things I told her the last time we tried to reconcile, some very hurtful things happened. And I let her know where I went wrong and how I really should have never tried to get back with her because she was in such a tough spot and she asked me for help. And I immediately tried to date her again. And I said, I'm really sorry I did that. It was selfish. My intentions were good. I wanted you to be okay, but it was selfish. And she said, Adam, you don't realize I'm happy you did it, because if you didn't do it, I probably would have killed myself. You saved my life, but I appreciate it. That happens in my life because of God and AA, the man I've become in AA to the people around me, that I can enter a space with someone else with a lot of hurt that we have and a lot of history, and we can have that moment. It's pretty cool. And I learned it because of these actions that I take. I've made amends to many people. My home group, they showed me immediately, we're going to get sober and then we're going to carry the message. There's no squatters in the lifeboat of AA. If I pull you in the lifeboat, you need to start pulling other people in. And we got to work. I can tell you, my first 2 years of sobriety, legitimately, on average 3 days a week, I was in a treatment center or a Salvation Army or a halfway house bringing the AA message with my group. Became the treatment chair in my area. I learned a lot about service and outside of the home group in AA, right? I started to realize I've been taking AA for granted the whole time I've been in here. Like, every time I'd relapse, I'd come back, I'd be like, dude, you're still here? Of course. And the chairs are set up. Of course. And the coffee's never once thought that this is a big world here and some of us have to put some work in, right? Service, you ever hear that saying, service keeps you sober? There's some truth to it. I can tell you that I've never done service in AA with the thought because I want to stay sober. It's because I'm grateful. How many times have you been in an AA meeting, somebody says, the topic is gratitude, and then everybody just talks. Gratitude, you express action with gratitude. It's not about talking. And people are going to talk about how grateful they are. No, how many people have you helped? Do you even help out your home group? Have you ever set a chair up? You know, I started to learn all this stuff. I started sponsoring guys, I don't even know how. Like, I wasn't even 90 days sober, people asked me to sponsor them. And I'll never forget, there was a guy, I really liked this dude. And he was getting sober, and he was having a great experience. And we met him in Turning Point, this rehab in Patterson. And I was maybe 6 months sober at the time. This dude's like a month sober. We're running around. We're having a great time. And he actually came to us. He had a criminal case over his head, and that's why he went into rehab. He got busted for dealing drugs. And 3-4 months, he's sober. He's doing an inventory. He's making amends. He's carrying a message with us. And he was like, dude, I have to go to court. My hearing is coming up. I'm not really sure how it's going to go. He asked me if I would come with him. I said, of course, you know. And I went to court with him. And as a group, we actually, I probably wouldn't do this today because I know more about AA tradition, that we don't get involved with outside entities. But I actually made a little list, and everybody signed it, and I put a little letter on top for the judge to say how active he had been in AA, right? And said, I'm a sponsor, and this is my name. And he had that paperwork. He gave that to the judge. We were in there for like 2 hours. Everybody was drug court or some DUI or something. You know, they finally get to him, and I'm looking at my guy's lawyer, and I'm like, this guy looks drunk. Like, red face, big nose. I'm like, I don't know where he got this lawyer. The guy's stumbling all around. He's talking to the guy's sponsor, Jay, and Jay comes back to me, and he's like, hey, you know, when it's my turn up there, would you mind saying a couple words to the judge if it's an option, you know, on my behalf? And I'm like, yeah, sure, right? I'm like 6 months sober. I speak in AA 3 times a week. Like Matlock, you know what I mean? I don't even know. You guys are a little bit older, you know, right? So, the judge does the whole thing, and he said, I see, you know, you have this thing, you've been getting involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it looks like you're doing the right thing. He said, oh, your sponsor's here, would you like to say something? So say who you are, and I go up there, and I'm like, Your Honor, like frozen. Like, I don't know if the reality of like, you're in court, bro, this is a judge, this is not a bunch of dudes in a rehab or people in AA. And I squeezed out some lines like, he's doing a good job, and he shows up, and not anything I had planned. And I actually, afterward, he told me, he was like, dude, he goes, I thought you got me locked up. So I go sit down, and I'm like, oh my God, I just blew it. And I'm sitting in the little pew in the court, and the judge goes, he goes, Mr. So-and-so, he goes, this means something to me that you're involved in something, that you're trying to get your life on track. It means something your sponsor would come here. And he goes, but a lot of people say they're getting their life on track. He goes, you're wearing a nice suit, you got a nice watch on. He's like, you know I could send you to jail today. Like, that's on the table. And I saw this guy I've been sponsoring, who was 3-4 months sober, stand up like a sober man and say, I know that. And what I did was wrong, and I'm trying to do the right thing. And you have to do whatever you have to do. And the judge said, because I'm really scratching my head, he goes, because everything you're saying sounds right, but there's one thing that's bothering me. And he goes, Adam. And I'm like, oh God, why is the judge saying my name, right? And he goes, my grandfather's name is Adam. My dad's name is Adam. And my son's name is Adam. I got a real soft spot for people named Adam. You have probation, do not get in trouble over the next 12 months, get out of here. God could and would if he were sought, but you have to seek him. I never saw God keeping a chair warm. Just didn't work that way, you know. Because I was willing to do this, I was put in that situation. And here's what I tell you, the hardest thing in my life, the hardest thing in my life that I ever went through happened in sobriety. So COVID hit March 2020, and so you guys remember when COVID hit after like a month or two, everybody had this theory that like, oh, it'll just go away when it's warm out. Like when the summer comes, it'll burn up in the atmosphere. Like that was a conversation. Like, oh, warm weather, it'll go away. We had no idea it was gonna be another 3 years of nonsense, right? And it's like July of 2020, and we're kind of like getting optimistic. And at the time, I reconciled with my ex-wife. I was living with her for months at that time, and miserable in quarantine. Like, if you told me you were happy on Zoom AA meetings, that's cool. I wasn't. I wasn't happy that I couldn't interact with other alcoholics like I had been and try to be useful and helpful. And I was looking forward to it. And my ex-wife says, Adam's right eye looks lazy to me. And Adam is my son. I say this often, and I don't know if people believe me, but like, I named my son after me because my ex-wife was like, she already had 2 kids. I was a stepdad. And she said, I got to name 2 kids already. What do you want to name the baby? Which was very thoughtful. And my first thought was, I'm naming him Adam because if things don't go well between us, you'll always have to say my name. I kind of read the writing on the wall, right? And that's where I was at. Like, I was like pretty sick, you know? And she said, I'm going to take Adam to the doctor. So she takes my son to the doctor. He's 8 years old at the time. The doctor says his vision is perfect. His eye is going lazy because he has a muscular problem. I'm concerned because over the last few months, I've seen young kids who had COVID but had no other symptoms, and then something like this happens and their brains are inflamed. So you need to get an MRI of his brain. So that was kind of scary, but at least we'll go and get it checked out. We took him, he gets this MRI, he's under anesthesia, obviously, he comes out, he comes to, getting ready to leave the hospital. I go outside to get the car on the parking deck as I'm driving out of the parking deck. I get a call from the eye doctor. And I thought that was weird. And I picked up the phone and I said, Dr. Chen, why are you calling? And she said, well, she said, I have some information for you. I said, well, I'm driving right now. And she said, well, if you're driving, I suggest you pull over. And I kind of thought maybe that meant something serious. And I said, what's going on? And she said, we got the results. Your son has a golf ball-sized tumor resting on his cerebellum. I made an appointment with a pediatric neurosurgeon. It's about a half an hour away from where you are. You need to go there now. And it didn't click in. And I said, like, should I really take him right now? He just got out from under anesthesia. And she said, I don't know if you understand this. I'll put it to you like this. If it was my son, I'd already be driving there. So I said, okay. So what I did in that moment is something I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's from an old speaker, and I picked it up, and I've tried to practice this, and I realized this. From the moment you're resentful, or you get the bad news, or you're disturbed, to the moment you get with God, all that space in between is when all the damage happens. And then in that moment, I sat in that car, and what my prayer was, which I recall, was very simple, and it was, we've been here before, we'll be okay. Guide us and protect us. I've heard it said in other places that when you really need God, it'd be best if you aren't introducing yourself. And I've been lucky because for a few years on a daily basis, I've been trying to make conscious contact like you guys every day. And through my actions, not just my words and my prayers. And we took him to the surgeon, and it's very disturbing to see a scan of your 8-year-old child's brain with a big mass on it. The doctor came in. He said, I think I know what it is. I take a lot of these out. It was a Friday afternoon. I'll see you Monday morning at 5 a.m. It's going to take about 4 hours. I think it's going to be okay. And my ex-wife was hysterically crying. And I felt a level of peace because I said that prayer, and I wanted to know what was going on, but I also didn't want to be too upset because my son was in the other room, and I knew if he saw me cry, he would know something was up. Because mom cries a lot, dad not so much, so this is what I figured. And I got home, and it was heavy, and I I got in the shower. My grandmother was from Sicily, right? And she always told me, if you're really upset and you really got to cry, do it in the shower, because it washes off and no one will see you. Which I don't know if any therapist would suggest that. That doesn't sound real healthy, but it worked. Hey, she got through the depression, right? So, and I'm in the shower and I'm crying, and I really, it was the first time in the few couple years I had been sober that I started questioning this God thing in that moment. Like, dude, my life is like a lot better, and I'm a dad today, and I'm trying to work this relationship out, I'm sober, and now I'm worrying my son's gonna die. And I heard that voice, the voice I heard a couple years earlier, right? And the voice said something like, hey dummy, this is why you're sober, right? You're not sober because the rest of your life is gonna be door prizes and gumdrops and blow pops. It's because you're gonna go through life as a sober man. I got out of the shower and I had to call my mother, and at the time, the relationship with my mom was a little rocky, because he's always been a little up and down, whether I'm sober or not, it seems. But I love my mom. We're good today. And I was afraid to call my mom, and I couldn't get the words out, your grandson has a brain tumor. And I had a big book on my dresser, and I didn't have it there so I could share this with you guys 4 years later. It's because it was there, and because all the best stuff in AA comes when you're out of ideas. And I said, I know there's something about fear in the big book. And I opened up the big book, and it says, we pray to, we ask God to remove our fears, right? And to direct us to be the person we're supposed to be. Now, I was able to make that call. And I was able to go through something that, like, had you asked me 5 years before, do you think you could question your son's mortality and stay sober? I would have been like, no way. I couldn't stay sober for one night in the hospital when he had an infection, And it's like, as spiritual and as hopeful as I want to be for you guys, it really sucked. My son had a 4-hour brain surgery. He had a massive scar on his head. It was about 10 inches long, like an S. He came out of it. When he finally came to and they tried to get him out of the bed after a day or two, he couldn't walk. He was asking his mother and I if he'd ever walk again, if he was going to die laying in the hospital bed. I don't wish it on anybody. It really stunk. But what it tried to do was practice the AA principles that I was taught. When I spent the night with him, because he was in the hospital a little over a week, at night they have a little bed there for you in like the pediatric family rooms. I reached out to people, guys I was sponsoring, people who I thought maybe were struggling, and what my texts looked like, because it couldn't be on the phone, my texts were, how are you doing? What's going on with you? They weren't, hey, pray for me, I'm going through a hard time. I read pages 86 to 88 in the morning, every single morning, a couple thousand times at this point, and it says very clearly, we don't pray for our selfish ends, right? We don't ask for prayers, we give prayers. We ask people how they're doing. We don't ask for the help once we've recovered. And that stuff got me through. And luckily, thank God, it was not malignant, it was not cancerous. My son had a tumor that was cystic, and 10 in every million kids under the age of 18 get this tumor. So I told him, next time play the lotto. You know what I mean? But I told myself, right, through this, like, my prayers to God were like, we're going to get through this, and then I'm going to share this with people. Because I would have never believed this. That I could not, it wasn't even about, like, I thought about getting drunk. I thought about how I could be useful or helpful, about how I could show up for people. Like, I always showed up to my own father's funeral drunk. I'm that guy. And my son got home, and I'll end on this. He was on a very serious dose of steroids because of the trauma from the surgery and the swelling, and they had to bring his brain swelling down, and he's a little guy, and it was a lot of steroids. And once he came home, as he was coming off the steroids, he was getting withdrawals. He was getting hot flashes, to chills, he was throwing up, And I'm like, damn, I know what that's like, right? Something a little different, but I know what that's like, you know? And I'm watching him suffer. Like, we made it through this hospital thing, and now I'm watching him suffer. And it went on for days. The doctor said, basically, if he gets sick, give him the drugs again for a couple days, and then take him off again. And if he gets sick, do it again until he doesn't get sick. So for like 2 weeks, we just watched him suffer on this medication. And it got to a point where when he first came home, his best friend lived down the street, his best little 8-year-old friend. And his best friend had an older cousin who was like 25. But somehow, when he was my son's age, give or take, he had the same exact tumor and the same exact surgery. And when my son first came home, this young man, his name was Dan, he came by the house and he brought my son gifts. And he gave him a pep talk and he gave him a card. He said, I'm gonna give your dad my number if you ever want to talk. You know, the kindness of normal people, because I make no bones about it. Like, I show up to help an alcoholic. Underneath it, part of it is because I don't want to die. Like, I want to do it, and it's part of my life. But people sometimes just show up. Good people. And after my son is suffering, he said, Dad, can I call Dan? And I said, of course. So we go on the porch. He's not feeling hot. He calls Dan up. He says, hey, Dan, it's Adam. It's kind of cute to listen to an 8-year-old on the phone, right? And he said, Dan, when you came home after the brain surgery, were you going through this when you came off the medication? Like, I threw up. I don't feel good. Dan said, yeah, I went through that. He said, did your mom and dad tell you you were going to be okay? And he said, yeah, they did. He goes, did you believe him? He's like, nah, I don't think I really did. He goes, Dan, am I going to be okay? Because I feel like I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. Just suffering, basically. And Dan said, yeah, buddy, it'll get better. You'll be okay. It's not going to be like this forever. And my son said the coolest AA 12-step thing I ever heard. He goes, you know what, Dan? I know my mom and dad love me, but when they tell me I'm going to be okay, I don't believe them. Because they haven't been through what we've been through. He said, but when you tell me, I believe you. And that's why we're here. That's why I'm here tonight. You know, like, I hope I said something that means something to someone, right? Like, I just kind of show up and do my job. But you guys said at the beginning of the meeting, and sometimes I forget, hope, right? Like, almost 8 years ago when I came in this time around, I saw my son for 3 hours on a Sunday and 2 hours on a Tuesday for months. Today, he's almost with me 50% of the time. I split summers, coaches basketball teams, right? Like, he's a normal kid, and I'm a normal dad, right? I have a relationship with my mom. She spent time in the hospital over last year in assisted living. I show up for her today. My ex-wife likes me. Sort of, I don't know. But, right? Like, I'm in a relationship today that's, like, honest and fairly healthy. Hope. I didn't believe these things were real, and the only thing is, listen, you come hang out in AA, get some free stuff at the snack table, right? Put $1 in the basket, maybe take $1 out. Nobody's going to say anything, right? Keep your chair warm, come up with some story, do whatever the hell you want, right? But step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. So if anybody ever asks you, what's the AA message? It's literally right there before, carry this message. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. That is the message we carry, and behind that, that's a ton of hope. That's a ton of hope, and I wish that for everybody in here, especially if you're struggling. And I hope I did that tonight. Thank you.
All right, incredible stuff. First and foremost, I want to thank Adam for coming out here tonight, delivering an incredible message of hope and recovery to our group here. A couple of quick announcements and we'll close down the meeting. As was mentioned, the food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock every week, so feel free to come early, enjoy the refreshments we put out if you want to get involved with this group. We're always looking for new members. There's always a meeting after the meeting, so feel free to hang out while we're breaking down the meeting. If you do want to help out with some service work, we'll have to put away all these chairs. It is customary for us to thank our speakers as they do come here on their own time and expense, so usually we'll form a line in the front here and we'll thank our speakers personally. Thanks to everyone for helping out with the meeting. Thanks to our readers, our greeters. Thanks to Ms. Kay for taking care of the kitchen over there. And let's thank our speaker, Adam, one more time. And if you do care to join us, we have a beautiful way of closing down. We're going to circle up and we'll do our Lord's Prayer. We'll close down the meeting as always with a brief moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic inside and outside of these rooms, followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father,